With last weekend's showdown between Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Jeff Neal now in the past, the year's action has finally come to a halt, leaving the team here at MMA Dive free to bring you our first annual end-of-year awards. Now, before anyone chimes in to let us know that Ryzen's own annual New Year's Eve event, Ryzen 26, has yet to take place, allow me to make it perfectly clear to all of you that despite us being big fans of him here at MMA Dive, Tenshin Nasukawa was sadly not in the running for any of the awards that we're about to unveil. 16 categories, 16 awards given. There's going to be some controversy, there might even be some tears, but with a year as crazy as the one that we just saw, that was always going to be the case. So with that out of the way, I'll be your fake Irish accent sporting John Kavanagh impersonating host, and I'm very happy to bring you the first annual MMA Dive Awards. So to kick things off, we wanted to get perhaps the most negative award of them all out of the way. There were indeed a lot of fun fights this year, but for our dud of the year, we were looking to find that one bout that simply left us all feeling a bit empty. And while there were a number of clashes that just didn't live up to their billing this year, no single fight managed to piss off the sports community more than the 5-round middleweight title showdown between Israel Adesanya and Yoel Romero. Now personally, I didn't hate this fight in real time. I find it near impossible to be bored watching the subtle feinting game of Israel Adesanya or watching Yoel Romero in any capacity, given how completely and utterly explosive he can be. In truth, it was a boring fight, an underwhelming display that left a lot of fans hoping for a lot more than they got, making it a worthy winner of the opening award of this show. Next up, we have the Comeback of the Year award, an honor that is bestowed upon the fighter who managed to find a way to get their hand raised in a situation that seemed to be slipping completely out of their control. And while we could have looked at the successful overall returns of guys like Brian Ortega and Conor McGregor as examples of comebacks that left us all stunned, for this award I'd like to boil it down to a much more simple level. The winner of the MMA Dive Comeback of the Year award is Beneil Dariush, a man who takes home the award not only for his ongoing 5-fight win streak 6 years after he originally debuted, but primarily for his stunning knockout of Drakkar Klose at UFC 248. It was the type of finishing sequence that needed to be seen live to be believed. Klose had Dariush hurt and in the perfect position to land one more pivotal shot, but somehow Dariush managed to navigate those treacherous waters, landing a perfect counter to put Klose on skates. With the tide turning in his favor, he stepped on the gas, resulting in one of the most entertaining bout conclusions of the year. A huge win for a reliably fun operator at 155 pounds. I feel as though we could have gone down several different routes for this category. Such was the level of electricity brought by these mixed martial artists each and every week, across many different promotions around the globe. But for my money, no one round this year had me on the edge of my seat quite like round 2 of Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker's stunning showcase back in June. Seriously, these two guys emptied their hearts out in that contest, swapping punches, kicks, knees and elbows with the type of fearlessness that just doesn't come around that often. It was a hugely special fight between two incredibly game athletes. For the Most Improved Fighter of the Year award, we were looking for that fighter who made us all sit up and admit that we had some major reshuffling of our opinions to do. I was very nearly going to give this award to Brian Ortega for his incredible 5-round display against Chan Sung Jung, a performance that reaffirmed his status as a member of the featherweight elite. But then I was quickly forced to accept the eventual victor's clear argument for the honor. Charles Oliveira managed to flip our expectations about him and his potential completely on their head as he began to carve out a new life for himself in the lightweight division. Known primarily for his wild scrambling and unpredictable submission game, the Charles Oliveira who capped off his 2020 with a masterful dissection of Tony Ferguson looks like a different beast entirely. Now perhaps the most interesting contender at 155 pounds, though Bronx's trajectory this year has been nothing less than a joy to behold, making him the clear winner in this category. Next up, we're going to take a look at the award that is contested between the finest minds the sport has to offer, the Coach of the Year. They say a fighter is only as good as the team that surrounds him, and while that statement isn't always true, in the case of this year's winner, I do get the feeling that he has had more than his fair share of input. There is indeed something bubbling under the surface in Auckland, New Zealand's City Kickboxing, and if you spend 5 minutes listening to the gym's head coach Eugene Behrman, it's easy to understand why. Two of the sport's most impressive champions are currently under his tutelage. Alexander Volkanovski, an incredibly gifted fighter who turned in a masterful display to edge out the similarly masterful Max Holloway in one of my favourite performances of the year, and of course the superstar Israel Adesanya, who rebounded from his dud of the year winning showdown with Yoel Romero to completely demolish Paulo Costa at UFC 253. Eugene Behrman is well and truly at the forefront of what's going well in MMA right now, and with several prospects looking set to make their own splash in 2021, look forward to hearing much more about him and the City Kickboxing team next year. Despite the absence of crowds for the vast majority of the year, the actual product we received, in terms of live MMA, was of an incredibly strong quality. From the major events that came from the UFC and Bellator, to some excellent showings from PFL, KSW, Cage Warriors and more, I feel as though we, as the MMA community, were never more grateful to have combat sports on our screens. And while there were several events that were more than deserving of this honour, the winner of this award, UFC 249, was unique due to the fact that it served as the return of live sports after a near 2-month absence. And if that wasn't enough, the fights that night were nothing short of magical. From Francis Ngannou's destruction of Jairzinho Rosenstrike to Calvin Kattar's brutal KO of Jeremy Stevens, we got Anthony Pettis and Donald Cerrone, the retirement of Henry Cejudo after his TKO victory of Dominic Cruz, and of course, to top it all off, there was the stunning 5-round clash between Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson, a fight that stood as a stark reminder to us all that we should never underestimate any fighter's ability to change, to adapt, and to escape our constant attempts to pigeonhole them. An absolutely wonderful night for the sport of mixed martial arts. Next up, we have the upset of the year, the award designed to honour those moments that left us completely shocked, the fights that left many a gambling man in tears, the sure thing that turned out to be that 1 in 100 chance. And while my original instinct was to single out Sean O'Malley's loss against Marlon Vera, in reality, even with the nature of that loss in mind, anyone who knows anything about Vera's merits as a fighter will know that it wasn't actually that shocking. Upsetting for O'Malley and his fans? Perhaps. But all in all, in my eyes, the fight that stood as the biggest upset of them all came when the Happy Warrior, Roxanne Modafferi, managed to bring the hype train of Maycee Barber to a resounding halt. Despite her age and lack of experience, UFC President Dana White had already been pegging Barber to outdo John Jones's record as the youngest champion in UFC history. Setting her up against a veteran of Roxanne Modafferi's experience seemed like the logical next step, as the old would be swept aside by the new. Well, if that was the plan, no one told Roxanne. A deserving winner after what was a dominant display over 3 rounds. This year hasn't been the best of times for the usually dependable duo of Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier. Perhaps I'll make a video about it at some point, but their delivery this year has often been guilty of dipping into their own narratives too much, most notably during the Figueiredo vs Moreno and Jones vs Reyes matchups. And overall, their tendency to playfully go off topic mid-fight can detract from the actual focus of the broadcast, the fights. And while I certainly think that the issues this year are fixable, I wanted to give props to the Count Michael Bisping for his tremendous work at the desk over the last 365 days. Finding and achieving that perfect balance between technical analysis and charismatic fight calling, Bisping has really hit his stride this year in terms of his ability to captivate, educate, and interpret exactly what's going down on the night. A worthy winner and a man who is clearly working hard to get better at his craft. Who has truly made the most significant developments in terms of their standing within the sport this year? Well, it depends on your criteria. As most of you will no doubt guess, this award will boil down to 2 names. And while I really did want to honour Khamzat Chimaev's meteoric rise and his stunning body of work in the year's latter half, he has not yet faced the type of tests that would make him the victor here. Don't get me wrong, he's a star in the making and a genuinely exceptional prospect. But this award's going to Kevin Holland. With a 5-0 record over the course of just 7 months, while Holland was certainly known to the hardcores before, to say that 2020 was not his breakout year would be insane. From his finish of Anthony Hernandez in May to his stunning knockout from his back against Jacare Souza this month, this was the year that Kevin Holland well and truly arrived in a major way. Whether he can replicate his success in 2021 is anyone's guess, but I know for a fact a lot of you can't wait to find out. For the Personality of the Year award, I really had to think about what I wanted to do here. I've had a lot of fun with the likes of Darren Till, Chael Sonnen and Daniel Cormier for the most part over the last year or so. These guys all help us to take the edge off what is a truly grueling sport at times, all things considered. But for this year's Personality of the Year award, I wanted to draw attention to a man who I felt truly began to own his role within the promotion. Jon Anik had big shoes to fill upon stepping up to take over from the hugely popular and instantly recognizable Mike Goldberg back in 2016. Goldberg was fun and he was over the top, serving as the perfect voice behind an era of mixed martial arts that was in many ways a lot more silly. But the UFC wanted to make a change, and that change came with several tough decisions. And while there was certainly something of a void left in the absence of the legendary Goldberg, I feel like this year was the year that I truly began to appreciate just how good Jon Anik is at his job. Where the meandering ways of Rogan and Cormier may irk some, Anik always remains centered on the task at hand, the captain of the ship, always ready to steer it back on course. He might not be the obvious pick for this award, but I felt like giving the unsung hero of every UFC broadcast his dues. If I may call this end of year awards show to a halt for a moment. To all of our regular viewers over the last few weeks, you'll know the drill, but we're really trying to up our game here at MMA Dive in order to bring you even more content coming into the new year. So if you're really enjoying what we're doing so far, be sure to leave a comment and a like to let YouTube's algorithms know that we're fast becoming one of the best MMA channels on the platform. Obviously, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so now to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Okay, back to the matter at hand. Now we're getting into the big hitters. In a year that was filled to the brim with hugely pivotal moments within the sport of mixed martial arts, there was no single moment that left us all in shock like the retirement of the undefeated UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. It was in many ways the perfect moment, one that encapsulated everything the Eagle is as a person and as an athlete. His victory over Justin Gaethje was clinical, a truly brilliant piece of grappling wizardry that saw the highlight dispatched of just seconds after the fight first hit the mat in the second round. Khabib's reaction to the win and the speech that followed stood as one of the most organic moments you're ever likely to see inside a cage. That man had endured so much in the months that led up to that fight, mainly through the passing of his father Aldo Manap, and to see him broken down like that was nothing short of moving. Who knows if he will stay retired in the long run, but as far as 2020 is concerned, that was without question our MMA moment of the year. Okay, we're very much into the business end of this awards show now, with the next honour coming in the form of the Submission of the Year. Indeed, there were quite a few interesting contenders for this award, fighters who managed to wow us with unpredictable techniques, often on the verge of defeat. But in terms of the significance and overall execution of this award's eventual winning submission, I can't look past the most famous moment of the lot, Khabib Nurmagomedov's triangle choke finish of Justin Gaethje in the UFC 254 main event. Back-to-back awards for the Eagle are a testament to the overall impact of his 29th and potentially final outing inside that octagon. But even when you ignore the overall context of what transpired on that night, the way he worked for and swiftly nailed that triangle choke was a thing of beauty. No context needed. Next up we have the Knockout of the Year award. The award that to some fighters is perhaps the most coveted of them all in terms of lasting appeal. Fighter of the Year honours are nice, but when you stop and think about it, a knockout of monumental proportions can ensure your inclusion on highlight reels for all of eternity. And while that certainly doesn't matter to all fighters, I have the feeling that this year's winner was positively elated with his handiwork when all was said and done. In this category, above all others, I felt as though my hands were well and truly tied. Obviously, Joaquin Buckley won this award, but I'd like to give some love to Kevin Holland for his stunning KO of Jacare Souza, Calvin Kattar for his hellish elbow of the famously tough Jeremy Stephens, and Cody Garbrandt for his massive right hook finish of Rafael Assunção. That said, Buckley's knockout well and truly blows each and every one of them out of the water. Never before have we seen a finish of such perfect athletic execution. I was absolutely floored watching that knockout live, honestly. There have been knockouts of greater significance and with higher stakes before, but in terms of pure ninja-esque movie fight scene madness, that might have been the single greatest KO in UFC history, and obviously a deserving winner of this award. With an eye on the elite, there were indeed several fighters who managed to find a degree of consistency that made them deserving of consideration. As far as honorable mentions are concerned, Weili Zhang, Holly Holm, Chris Cyborg and Mackenzie Dern all posted multiple victories this year and deserve to have their achievements highlighted alongside this award's winner. And to be honest, I'm going to give Joanna Jędrzejczyk a mention here too, because even in defeat, her one outing this year was an unbelievable scrap. But once again, it was the UFC flyweight champion Valentina Shevchenko who proved herself to be of a different caliber. Indeed, that dream third matchup with Amanda Nunes will always linger, but for my money, with Nunes absent for most of the year, Valentina's 2 victories were enough to make her status as one of the world's best pound-for-pound fighters crystal clear. It's hard to know who will be able to get the better of Shevchenko as long as she does reside at 125 pounds, but with her dominant victories over Jennifer Maia and Caitlin Chookagian in mind, it's pretty clear that the flyweight crop have a lot of catching up to do. Next up is our second to last category, the Male Fighter of the Year, the award given to the fighter who enjoyed the greatest level of success within the upper echelons of the sport, with honourable mentions going to Gilbert Burns, Israel Adesanya, Jan Blachowicz, Charles Oliveira and Kevin Holland, who all managed to turn in amazing years at the highest level. But for me, the winner of this award has to be Deiveson Figueiredo, the blossoming king of the flyweight division, the man who has in many ways done wonders in elevating the status of his division, in a time where its long-term health is not a given. Indeed, Cejudo was the man who initially saved it, if you buy into that narrative, but under the rule of Deiveson Figueiredo, the 125-pound weight class has flourished, leading to back-to-back pay-per-view headlining appearances for the champ to close out the year. Whether it was his finishes of Alex Perez and Joseph Benavidez or his instant classic battle with Brandon Moreno, Figueiredo has come out of the year 2020 with his name at the forefront of our minds. And while the bigger challenges undoubtedly await him, this incredibly powerful and compelling flyweight champion looks set to be an even bigger hit in 2021. And finally, we come to the award that in many ways sums up exactly why it is that we tune in the first place. The Fight of the Year award is the one that perhaps best encapsulates what makes us fans of this sport, honouring the type of contests that make fans of newcomers and thrill veteran supporters in equal measure. This was a very competitive category, even if the ultimate decision was a relatively easy one. Honourable mentions should of course be given to Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker's instant classic in June, as well as the flyweight title matchup between Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno earlier this month. But when I look back on the year's worth of action, no fight did more for me than Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. That bout was about as exhilarating a 25-minute contest as you're ever likely to see in any sport, combat-centric or otherwise. These two women defied even the most lofty of expectations with a gritty, brutal, and ultimately beautiful display of violence that saw the champion Zhang retain her title. Joanna, even in defeat, once again proved herself to be worthy of her undeniable status as a legend of the sport, because on that night, it really didn't seem like it was necessary to crown a winner. Indeed, the record books needed to say what they needed to say, but all in all, fights like these do not come around that often. And as a result, selecting 2020's Fight of the Year was a very easy task. And that will do it for our first annual MMA Dive Awards show. Did you agree with our picks for the most part? Be sure to let us know in the comments section below, we really do love to hear from you guys. We'll be doing more end of year content to close out 2020, so be sure to keep an eye on the channel over the course of the coming week or two. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like before subscribing to the channel to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. And as always, thank you for watching.